oratory skills. They were good communicators. Okay. So we find that Al-Mu'tazila, this school of thought and its individuals, the ulama, the scholars within them, they began to take on the Zoroastrians who were in the area. There's another mixture of the Zoroastrian religion with Christianity called the Machianism. Then there were, within Islam, there were the types of literalist Muslims who did not want to think at all. And then Mu'tazila was the scholars in the context of Al-I'tizal were dealing with them. They were dealing with also the fuqaha of Islam and the muhaddithin. There were arguments and disagreements and polarizations of opinions that pitted Al-Mu'tazila. They weren't only taking on, let's say, Persian philosophy, Hindu philosophy, Greek philosophy, the remnants of which were in the area. They weren't only taking on Christians and Jews who had their own arguments about their own religion against the Muslims. They were also taking on the ignorant Muslims, people who had become Muslims and brought with them their own background, baggage into Islam. And they were taking on at the same time al-fuqaha and the muhaddithin. All of these they were in, you can say, a mental battle with. They were doing mental battle with all of these types. And then they also took on what is called today, what has become the rationale for Ahl al-Sunnah and al-Jama'ah. At that time, they were called al-Asha'ira and they were called al-Maturidiyya. Al-Asha'ira are more influenced by the Hanbali school of thought. Al-Maturidiyya are influenced more by the Hanafi school of thought. Al-Ash'ari was from Al-Basra. Muhammad ibn Mahmud Al-Maturidi was from the area of Samarkand in what is today Central Asia. So you can right now get a feeling of the type of maybe heated debates that were going back and forth between them. Wasil ibn Ata, I think, if not his famous book, probably one of his most famous one is called Alf Mas'ala, 1,000 questions. And obviously he would take these questions and rebut them or analyze them or answer them in his own way, and particularly those, because many of these questions in this book were a reply to Al-Manawiyya or Machianism, that hybrid of Zoroastrianism and Christianity that was in some areas of Persia. So most of that book was a type of response to their mentality and their philosophy. One of the Mu'tazila erudite intellectual figures, his name was Abu al-Hudayl al-Allaf. They say in these history books that he was so effective in presenting his ideas and debunking his opponents that around 3,000 individuals became Muslims just listening to him. Of course, not all at once, from different occasions and throughout his life. That's what happened. Okay, so now if we take a closer look at what else, what in particular were these Mu'tazila speaking about that set them apart from, let's say, most of the other Muslims around? And this sentence probably will help you understand. We say that Allah has sifat. Sifat means attributes or descriptions. Allah has sifat. The philosophical question is, are these sifat part of His essence, or are they independent of His essence? And Al-Mu'tazila said that Allah does not have what other Muslims consider to be sifat ma'ani. Like if we say Allah has power and has a will and can hear and can see and can speak, does this mean that that these are independent of Him, or these are part of Him? Now you can see, as far as we are concerned, I hope we can mature enough to a degree that, look, if they are going to say it one way and other Muslims are going to say it another way, it's just an academic issue. It should not be a matter of almost dividing the Muslims, because as we're going to see, as time goes by, their ideas are going to become very divisive among the Muslims. They said that these descriptions of Allah are part of His essence. We're going to take a pause here. Who are we to know whether we agree with this opinion or don't agree with it? You can do whatever you want. I don't put a lot of stock in this. But before we go further into how they are thinking, now what difference is it going to make whether you in your mind are convinced that Allah's sifat are part of His essence, or they are not part of His essence? Who are we? First of all, we'd say, who are we to pass a type of judgment or a type of final opinion on whether this is that or that is the other? But this is actually what was happening at that time in the context, and they were saying, and they gave an example of this. The ayah in the Quran says, وَكَلَّمَ اللَّهُ مُوسَى تَكْلِيمًا, which literally means, and Allah spoke to Musa per se, or literally. وَكَلَّمَ اللَّهُ مُوسَى تَكْلِيمًا. Okay, obviously Allah subhanahu, when He revealed these ayat to us, He revealed these ayat for us to attempt to understand them. And we tried to understand them, and they tried to understand them. So when they were asked, okay, if you're saying Allah as far as communicating, as far as speaking is concerned, here we have an ayah that said Allah spoke to Musa. How do you understand this? And because they were on a mental drive, they had to explain. So they said that Allah placed the words, Allah placed His words in that bush. Now, when you read this, say, in that bush, this sounds a little biblical here. But anyways, He placed His words in that bush, and through whatever mechanism in nature, words began to emanate from that bush. But Allah personally did not speak. And this led to them formulating a position of whether the Quran itself is created or not created. هل القرآن مخلوق أم غير مخلوق? So they said, well, if Allah created these words that were in a manner placed in a bush and then expressed, then the Quran itself is makhluk. The Quran is created. Now, when this idea first was presented, it was not popular. Not many Muslims were accepting or buying into this. There were some. It wasn't like they were on their own or something. No, there were Muslims who were listening, and there were Muslims who were following what they were saying, especially people who come from a thinking background. So what happened was, in the year 2012, during the reign of the Abbasi king Al-Ma'mun actually adopted the Mu'tazili school of thought. So now you had the highest guy in the government, who himself was considered by some to be a Mu'tazili.
So you said 2012?
I'm sorry, 212. Did I say 2012? Good thing you corrected me, or brought it to my attention. No, 212 Hijri. In the year 212 Hijri, the Mu'tazili school of thought became the official school of thought of the Islamic State. And before that time, because the Mu'tazila were sort of the underdog, and when you find yourself in the position of underdog, there's always that area of popular sympathy with you, even though the population as a whole may not agree with you, but they were in that position. Come that year, 212 Hijri, and the i'tizal became the official state-adopted philosophy. Then what the state began doing, the Abbasi state at that time, what it began doing is it began to discriminate among Muslims, whether they were Muslim scholars or whether they were Muslim employees of the government, or somehow whatever relationship they had with the government. If they did not agree with this official opinion, they would be severed from their service. They would be given the pink slip. We don't want you anymore. And their testimony would not be accepted in the courts. You don't agree with us, we're not going to accept your testimony in court. So right now we had official discrimination against other Muslims who disagreed with this Mu'tazili school of thought.